The smell of garlic and basil hit me as soon as I opened the back door of Bella Rosa. Even after 6 months away, the scent was so familiar it made my chest ache. This restaurant had been my whole world growing up. The place where I'd done homework at corner tables, learned to make pasta at my nana's knee, and watched my parents build their dream into reality. Now it belonged to my brother Tony, and I was just a visitor. My name is Julia Romano, and 6 months ago, I agreed to let my younger brother take control of our family restaurant after our parents retired to Florida. It seemed logical at the time. I had a successful career in software development, while Tony had worked at Bella Rosa since high school. But something about his eagerness to take over had never sat right with me. Jules, Maria, our longtime hostess, spotted me as I made my way through the kitchen. "Oh my God, you're back." She rushed to hug me, her familiar perfume mixing with the cooking smells. "We've missed you around here. It's different now." The hesitation in her voice made me pause. "Different how?" Before she could answer, Tony's voice boomed from the office. "Who let you in the back door?" I turned to face my brother, noting how his traditionally warm brown eyes had turned cold and businesslike. At 32, 2 years younger than me, he'd always been the charming one, the social butterfly. But something had changed in him since taking over the restaurant. "I still have my key," I said, holding it up. "Dad never asked for it back." "Well, you should have called first," he said, straightening his expensive suit jacket. The designer label was new. Tony used to say only pretentious people spent that much on clothes. "We're busy preparing for dinner service." "It's 3 in the afternoon," I pointed out. "And I need to get something from Dad's office." "My office now," he corrected quickly. "What do you need?" Mom called. She can't find their wedding anniversary photo album and thinks Dad left it in his desk when they moved. Tony's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "I cleaned everything out of that desk. There was no album." "I'd like to check myself if you don't mind." It meant a lot to Mom. He blocked the office doorway, his shoulder tense. "I said I cleaned it out. Don't you trust me?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken tension. Once, I would have said yes without hesitation. Tony and I had been close growing up, partners in crime in the controlled chaos of a family restaurant. But lately, 10 minutes, I said firmly. "That's all I need." He stared at me for a long moment, then stepped aside with obvious reluctance. "Fine, but make it quick. I have a supplier meeting soon." The office looked different than I remembered. Dad's old football posters were gone, replaced by modern art pieces that seemed out of place in a family Italian restaurant. His ancient desktop computer had been upgraded to a sleek laptop. Even the familiar smell of his cigars had been masked by some expensive air freshener. I went straight to the desk, pulling open drawers that had once been organized chaos but were now meticulously arranged. No photo album. I was about to give up when I noticed something odd about the bottom drawer. It seemed shallower than I remembered. Kneeling down, I ran my fingers along the edges until I felt it. A slight gap that shouldn't be there. With careful pressure, the false bottom popped up, revealing a hidden compartment. There was no photo album. Instead, I found a small black device about the size of a USB drive. When I picked it up, I realized what it was: a wireless camera receiver. "Find what you were looking for." I jumped at Tony's voice, quickly palming the device. "No album," I said, standing up. "Mom must have packed it after all." He nodded, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Then I guess you're done here." That night, alone in my apartment, I connected the receiver to my laptop. As a software developer, I knew my way around most technology. It took only a few minutes to access the stored footage. What I saw made my blood run cold. The camera had been hidden in the office's smoke detector, positioned to capture the entire room. I watched footage of Tony meeting with various people after hours. Meetings that had nothing to do with restaurant supplies. "The restaurant's perfect for this," he told one man in an expensive suit. "Cash business, high turnover. No one looks too closely at the books in places like this." "And your sister?" the man asked. "She's not going to cause problems." Tommy laughed. "Jules, she's too busy with her tech job to pay attention. Besides, she trusts me. They all do." My hands shook as I fast-forwarded through more footage. Money changing hands. Ledgers being altered. Conversations about cleaning cash through the restaurant's accounts. My brother was using our family's beloved restaurant to launder money. Suddenly, his insistence on taking control made perfect sense. His new clothes, his expensive car, his eagerness to get our parents to retire. It was all part of his plan. "Oh, tell me," I whispered to my empty living room. "What have you done?" My phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Can we meet? There's something you need to know." I stared at the message, then back at my laptop screen where Tony was shaking hands with another sketchy business partner. How many people had suspected something was wrong but been too afraid to speak up? "Corner Cafe, tomorrow morning," I texted back. 7 a.m. I stayed up most of the night, reviewing footage and taking notes. The camera had been recording for months before our parents retired. Dad must have suspected something, installed it secretly. But why hadn't he said anything? Why leave it for me to find? The next morning, Maria was already waiting when I arrived at the cafe, nervously shredding a napkin. "I should have called you sooner," she said as soon as I sat down. "But Tony, he's changed. He watches everyone, writes up people for tiny mistakes. 3 longtime servers have quit already." "How long have you known something was wrong?" I asked gently. She glanced around before leaning closer. "A few months. The numbers stopped making sense. We're doing the same business we always did, but somehow there's so much more cash. And these men come in, have meetings with Tony after hours." "Why didn't you tell my parents?" "Tony said he was making improvements, modernizing things. Your parents were so excited about retiring, about him taking over." She twisted her wedding ring anxiously. "But last week, I overheard something. They were talking about using the restaurant to clean dirty money. When Tommy saw me, he said if I breathed a word to anyone, he'd make sure my son lost his scholarship." My chest tightened. Maria's son Marco was in his first year of medical school, attending on a scholarship Tony had helped arrange through one of his new business contacts. "I found Dad's camera," I told her quietly. "I've seen the footage." Her eyes widened. "Your father knew?" "I think he suspected. But I don't understand why he didn't confront Tony directly." "Maybe," Maria hesitated, "maybe he wanted you to find it. You're the one who could understand what to do with it." I thought about my father, about how he always encouraged my interest in technology even while Tony mocked it as nerdy. Had he known this moment would come? "I need to be careful," I said finally. "These people Tony's involved with, they're dangerous. And he has leverage over too many people." Maria nodded, understanding. "What are you going to do?" I pulled out my phone, showing her an app I created overnight. "First, we're going to gather evidence. Real evidence, not just suspicions. I need your help, but it has to look like nothing's changed." "Of course," she said without hesitation. "Whatever you need." As we planned, I thought about the restaurant, about all the family memories it held. Sunday dinners after closing, birthday celebrations in the kitchen, my nana teaching me her secret recipe for tiramisu. Tommy wasn't just laundering money, he was corrupting everything our parents had built. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. But I had to be smart. One wrong move, and I wouldn't just be risking myself. I'd be putting Maria, Marco, and who knew how many others in danger. I needed more than just the camera footage. I needed to understand exactly what Tony was doing and who he was working with. Most importantly, I needed him to keep underestimating me. Let him think I was just his tech-obsessed sister, too naive to see what was happening right under my nose. He'd learned soon enough just how wrong he was. Over the next 2 weeks, I built my case carefully. The app I created allowed Maria and other trusted staff members to document suspicious activities without risking detection. Every late-night meeting, every unusual cash deposit, every strange supplier who visited Tony's office. It all went into my encrypted database. But the real breakthrough came when I discovered something else in Dad's hidden compartment, a small notebook filled with codes and numbers. At first glance, it looked like random scribbles. But Dad had taught me about ciphers when I was young, one of our many nerdy activities that Tony had never been interested in. It took me 3 days to crack his code, and when I did, I felt sick. Dad hadn't just suspected Tony's activities, he'd been tracking them for months. The notebook contained detailed records of suspicious transactions, names, dates. He'd been building his own case, but something had stopped him from acting on it. I was in my apartment, cross-referencing Dad's notes with my home data, when my phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. "Coming by the restaurant tomorrow? Need to discuss something important." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. In the past 2 weeks, I've visited Bella Rosa several times, playing the role of the oblivious sister perfectly. Tony had grown more relaxed, less defensive about my presence. Sure, I typed back. Lunchtime ok. Perfect, don't be late. I smiled grimly at my laptop screen, where I had footage of his latest business meeting playing. Don't worry, little brother. I wouldn't miss this for the world. The next morning, I backed up everything to multiple secure locations and made 2 important calls. Then I headed to Bella Rosa, the USB drive with the camera footage tucked safely in my pocket. Tony was waiting in his office, looking unusually pleased with himself. Jules, right on time. You said it was important, I said, taking the seat across from his desk. Everything okay? He leaned back, studying me with what seemed like genuine affection. More than okay. I've been thinking, you were right to be concerned about the restaurant, about our family's legacy. This was new. I kept my expression neutral, waiting. I want to offer you a position here, he continued. Director of Operations. You can handle the technology side, modernize our systems. We'll run it together, like we always talked about as kids. I felt a pang in my chest, remembering those childhood conversations. Once this would have been a dream come true. Working alongside my brother, building on our parents' success. Why now? I asked carefully. Because your family, he said, spreading his hands, and family should stick together. Plus, with your tech skills. He smiled. We could really expand our operations. The emphasis he placed on that last word told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't offering me a legitimate position. He wanted to use my skills to help him launder money more efficiently. That's quite an offer, I said slowly. Mind if I think about it? His smile tightened slightly. Of course. But don't take too long. This is a limited time opportunity. Was that a threat? Knowing what I knew now, probably. I stood up, adjusting my bag. I'll let you know by the end of the week. As I reached the door, he called out, "Oh, and Jules. Let's keep this between us for now. No need to mention it to Mom and Dad." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Outside the office, I took a deep breath, then texted a single word. Ready. Everything happened very quickly after that. As I walked through the kitchen toward the front door, I heard them enter, FBI agents moving swiftly and professionally. Tommy's outraged shouts echoed behind me as I stepped outside, where 2 people were waiting. Agent Carter, the woman introduced herself, showing her badge. We got your evidence package. Impressive work. Will it be enough? I asked. She nodded. More than enough. The camera footage alone would do it, but combined with your father's records and the financial data you collected, your brother and his associates are looking at serious time. I closed my eyes briefly, relief warring with sadness. Keep my father's name out of it, please. He tried to handle it himself, protect the family. That's why he retired when he did, to get my parents away from this mess. We understand, Agent Carter said gently. As far as anyone needs to know, the investigation started with anonymous tips from concerned employees. I watched as they led Tony out in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face a mask of fury. Our eyes met, and I saw the moment he realized the truth. You, he snarled. My own sister? No, Tommy, I said quietly. You did this. You betrayed everything Mom and Dad built, everything we were supposed to protect together. They put him in a car and drove away. I stood there for a long time, watching the place that had been my childhood home, now surrounded by federal agents and crime scene tape. Maria appeared beside me, tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now, I said, squaring my shoulders, we clean up his mess. Together. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings, media coverage, and damage control. The restaurant stayed closed initially, but I refused to let it die. While Tony awaited trial, I worked with the FBI to clear Bella Rosa's name, proving that many of the staff had been unwitting participants in his scheme. I took a leave of absence from my tech job and threw myself into restoring the restaurant. The old staff rallied around me, not just Maria, but the cooks, servers, and those boys who had been part of our extended family for years. The hardest part was telling our parents. Mom cried, but Dad just looked tired. You found a camera, he said quietly when we were alone. And my notes. I nodded. Why didn't you tell me? He sighed heavily. I thought I could handle it myself, protect both of you. By the time I realized how deep Tony was in, I was afraid they'd hurt him if I went to the authorities directly. So I left the evidence where I knew you'd find it. Because I'm the nerdy one, I tried to smile. Because you're the strong one, he corrected. You always were. Tommy, he wanted easy success, quick money. But you understood what really matters. 6 months after Tony's arrest, we reopened Bella Rosa. The dining room was packed with familiar faces, loyal customers, employees past and present, people who believed in second chances. I stood in the kitchen, watching the organized chaos I remembered from childhood. The smell of garlic and basil still filled the air, but now it felt clean again, honest. Maria's son Marco, home from medical school for the weekend, was helping serve tables. He'd insisted on keeping his scholarship money, working to pay it back himself rather than letting his mother feel indebted to Tony's corrupt contacts. My parents came back for the reopening. Mom hugged every customer like family, while Dad stood in his old office, my office now, looking at the changes I'd made. The modern art was gone, replaced by family photos. His old football posters were back up, next to my framed computer science degrees. You've done good, Julia, he said gruffly. The place feels right again. I thought about Tommy, about the plea deal he'd taken that would keep him in prison for at least 5 years. About the choice I'd made to protect our family's legacy, even at the cost of betraying my own brother. We'd all make choices, I said finally. Tommy chose greed. I choose this, our family, our real family. Dad squeezed my shoulder, and together we watched the restaurant buzz with life. This was what success really looked like. Not secret meetings and laundered money, but good food, honest work, and people coming together to share something real. Bella Rosa was more than just a restaurant. It was a testament to the power of choosing right over easy, of protecting what matters most. Tommy had forgotten that, but I never would. Because in the end, true family isn't just about blood. It's about the choices we make and the people we choose to become. I chose to be my father's daughter, my mother's strength, and the guardian of everything they'd built. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. And sometimes that makes all the difference.